To talk a bit more about the meeting that's taking place there right now, let's bring in French political analyst Jean-Christophe Gallien. Jean-Christophe, hello. Thanks for coming on the set. What do you think is going to come out of this meeting today between Emmanuel Macron, Prime Minister Borne, and the party officials?
Not much, in fact. The official messaging is about, enlarge the majority. Try, and you need to go. This is your mission now, done to Mrs. Borne. And I'm pretty sure the president himself doesn't think about that. He's preparing something else. We don't know what he's saying. He's on the negative part. He says there won't be a change of prime minister. We won't go to going to dissolve the National Assembly. And probably the reality is in between the two. One point is very important today is the issue of the violence. You were talking about all these problems. And today the battle seems around that narrative, the narrative of the violence. One side, the positions, the street are telling we only have that from the rest because the government only understands that pressure, that form of political conversation, which is the violence. And on the other side, today we see the government, the president from the Élysée and the whole people in the majority talking on the media, and they're asserting that the government will stay and will try to keep this country in order, even though the Charles III hasn't been able to come to France. This is difficult to understand. But today this is part. And the second issue is trying to break up, to my feeling today, let's not listen to what has been talked about today at Matignon at l'Élysée. The main issue on the political agenda in the domestic part is trying to break up the unity of the unions and try to unhook Mr. Berger, which is the CFDT, from the CGT. This is probably the only remaining tactical capacity from the government to try to stop what looks today as an endless slide, And in fact, the two parties are losing. Of course, the unions having pressure from the bases because the bases tell them you didn't win anything. We lost. The project has been voted and now is going. If the Conseil Constitutionnel passes it, it will be okay. And on the other side, politically, this is a defeat from Mr. Macron. A defeat for the opposition. Everybody's losing for the moment, and the whole street is looking like that.
Let's talk a bit more about the violence that you mentioned, this violence we've been seeing, particularly over the weekend, in a separate issue as well, in something that had to do with the environment. But we have been seeing these pictures around the world of violence here in France. Do you think that could have a backlash effect on the strike movement, and perhaps people will start turning out less because of that?
Of course. What has changed last week is that it was less about the pension reform. It was more about the way this country is handled on a government basis. 49.3, your reporter told it, was fueling the whole teenager activity on a more organic, way of doing demonstration or whatever. And it looks like the whole thing around that discontent, around the reform of the pension, is becoming more and more each day an anger against Mr. Macron, his government, around different issues. It was this weekend around environmental issue. It was around, of course, the young people today are the class of age in this country that are going more poorer and poorer, way above the retired people, for example. And today, everything is coming to reality. This country is emerging to realities that probably the governing body doesn't want to see, and the youngsters have problems, and they're being fueling to demonstrate their anger today because of the 49.3, because of environmental issue, because of inflation. The whole families are having the support of the entire country is still 67-70% for demonstration against not only the reform of the pensions, but the whole activity of the government.
You mentioned this briefly, but I want to ask you about the international ramifications of all of this. The visit of King Charles was cancelled because of the strikes. How else is France being seen internationally at this point? How does the world look at us?
This is France 24, and the English-speaking France 24. And how can we imagine our president, the whole country, on a diplomatic activity, trying to be part of the solution of conflicts in Ukraine, in Libya, in Sahel, if on the domestic side you're not able to settle the visit of a head of state, which is just crossing the channel. Today, it's a problem at that level too. It's not only about the media pushing the images of what's happening in Paris or in Bassine yesterday. It's all about the capacity for the PR, the President of the Republic, to be an active influencer or a political leader or geopolitical leader outside. And today, if you look from Moscow, if you look from Peking, if you look from Washington, if you look from London, if you Brussels, France's capacity has been a bit, diminished.
And yet some others might argue that actually maybe Emmanuel Macron is doing exactly what he always said he would do. He's standing firm. He doesn't need to get reelected. Maybe he can ride these protests out.
Of course, but what's happening is how long... Again, it's kind of a sliding. It's not the whole narrative, of course, coming from Mr. Macron is about winning the party and being stable and continuing and working on the reform. But the reality is different. The reality is about something that is difficulty. Next time in the parliament, he won't be able to have a majority. And probably next time, the whole it's not only 9 that we're missing to get his government out of capacity. So he won't be playing the game this way. So he needs to do something, probably in between Mrs. Borne out or dissolving the National Assembly. It's an agenda of weeks, probably.
All right, Jean-Christophe, thank you for that. Jean-Christophe Gallien, a French political analyst. Thank you very much.